But not only do we need to hear from these families, we want to make a very special announcement. The official count is in. 25,000 people here for the National Emergency March for Justice. Give yourselves a round of applause. 25,000. But we have people who've not only gone to jail, but people who are risking their lives on a daily basis. You all heard Sister Dorothy Elliott and the story of her son, Archie Elliott. He wasn't shot in a vestibule in front of his home. He was already in the police car, y'all, handcuffed, shot 16 times. No one has been brought to justice since then. But we have a brother, a colleague of mine on WOL. How many members of the WOL family do we have here? He is in day 50 of a hunger strike. Until the case of Archie Elliott is reopened, he is none other than the Black Eagle, the voice of Washington, Joe Madison.
Thank you. I am so proud of the families who stood here with pain in their hearts and their eyes to be with all of us on this historical day. This is a tremendous undertaking to bring much needed attention to the tragedy of police brutality that has become all too familiar for many of us and our families. 2.5 decades ago, at the opposite end of this national mall, a young minister from Atlanta, Georgia, talked about a new militancy which engulfed a generation to demand justice, to establish a matrix for a new social and legal order in America. He revealed a dream in which Black Americans would never be again undervalued, underestimated, or marginalized. He even spoke of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. Today, a generation later, we, the descendants of those freedom fighters, will not allow that dream to be transformed into a nightmare. However, I am mindful that for Dorothy Elliott, the nightmare became a reality 6 years ago when her son Artie was stopped by 2 Georges County, Maryland police officers, searched, handcuffed behind his back, strapped in the front seat of a police cruiser, and shot 14 times. The dream has ended for the family of Taisha Miller, whose beautiful 19-year-old teenage daughter was shot innumerable times in the head and back while stranded in her car in Riverside, California. The dream rings hollow for the mother and father of Amadou Diallo when he was fired upon 41 times while he stood unarmed in front of his Bronx, New York apartment. The dream has become a nightmare for thousands of Blacks, Hispanics, and Asian Americans whose children who have lost their lives, stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by rogue cops who undervalue and underestimate our worth as human beings. We have assembled here with PhDs and GEDs of all faiths and race. When bad cops pull you over with intent or inclination to do you harm, they don't ask you if you've got a PhD or a GED. They don't ask you what your religious belief is or your social status. All they know is that you are DWB, driving while black. We have assembled here today as a broad new coalition of conscience, religious leaders, students, union workers, everyday people willing to be arrested, to fast, to stand up to gross injustices, to say enough is enough. We have assembled here today to say to the President and his Justice Department that human rights violations are not just a foreign affair matter. In America, too often, police abuse is committed quietly in the hidden corners of America, but they are just as real as the human rights violations that make headlines around the world. We, as a new generation of freedom fighters, have come here today to mobilize and crystallize a new national movement that will demand new legislation, the enforcement of existing legislation, and investigation of misguided police and policing policies. Finally, we have come here today to say to our critics who have ridiculed the daily demonstrations organized by Reverend Al Sharpton as a publicity stunt that you ain't seen nothing yet. We're not chickens to be cooped up in the ghettos and the boroughs and reservations and neighborhoods to be terrorized and victimized needlessly at the hands of police authorities whom we have entrusted with the responsibility of protecting our communities. We are eagles, and this demonstration is just beginning. Let us say to our critics and put them on notice that we're going to fly this coop and we're going to sweep down on Riverside, California. We're going to swoop down on New York City. We're going to swoop down on Baltimore, Maryland. We're going to swoop down on Memphis, Tennessee. We're going to swoop down on Prince George's County, Maryland, to dramatize, energize, mobilize a widespread support for our cause. Let us pledge today, in the memory of all those who have been victimized and died at the hands of the police, that we will keep the pressure on. If the demonstrations at one police plaza in New York City were a publicity stunt, then so was Daisy Bates and the integration of Central High School in Little Rock, when she said, enough is enough. If my hunger strike, now in its 48th day, is a publicity stunt, then it was a publicity stunt when the students sat in at the Woolworth counter at Greensboro, North Carolina, and they said enough is enough. If this demonstration here at the foot of our nation's capital is a publicity stunt, so was the march from Selma to Alabama, when thousands said enough is enough. If standing up for simple justice and human dignity is a publicity stunt, then so was Rosa Parks' act of civil disobedience when she took a seat for freedom and demonstrated to the world that enough is enough. Let us now go forth with a new slogan, a new movement, into a new century, for a new generation. It is no longer a dream that we shall overcome, but a statement of fact. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. God bless you.